first thing you'll see here on the visual is there's too many names.
Yeah.
So that's number one. We have way too many security vendors out there. Let's break it down into an area where you had mentioned ZTNA. So when I
Mhm.
start thinking about that, there's certain names that are going to come up right away. Zscaler, of course, has done the
Mhm.
best job of just announcing them themselves in there. But we also have, Palo Alto still playing in that area. Fortinet,
Mhm.
for some smaller companies, are also still doing it. And Cisco, Cisco is a networking name that has turned into a security name. So one of the areas where they do have strength in security is in networking access. So any other names on this list that you want me to pull up while we talk about ZTNA?
I mean, there's certainly some well-known names in there. Cloudflare,
Sure.
F5, come to mind. But I mean, a lot of these it seems like just about everybody is doing
Yep.
ZTNA these days, including a whole raft of startups.
Yes. Yes.
We've been evaluating, a lot of companies, and some of them, you look at when they were founded, it's sort of 2020, 2021. So I think, again, that shift to remote work around the world has led to an absolute explosion in new market entrants, I would say.
And for those who can't see my screen, I also want you to know that ETR also does the emerging technology survey 4 times a year. These are the startups that you're speaking about, non-public entities that are a little bit more less mature, Series A through Series E type companies. But also anyone who is interested in seeing those names for their own POC, please let us know. We can go through that data as well. I'm going to jump back to the more mature companies here. Extremely interesting that you asked me to pull up Cloudflare. And this is a company that wow, they do a lot, right? They came out there just basically saying we're going to be a content delivery network, take some share from
Yep.
Akamai, and then just like Akamai realized they had so much traffic going through that they needed to secure it, or had the unique position to secure it with their global POP network really out at the end and the edge computing, and then it's turned now into its own cloud service and its own
Yep.
networking access. So this is becoming a one of those vendors that's really growing. One of the top security vendor names. They're the top networking name, and now they're also offering their own cloud services on both a compute and storage basis. I would love to hear any information you have on this name, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, they came up when we were looking into ZTNA. And again, I knew Cloudflare, but I immediately thought content delivery network.
Right.
What do they know about zero trust access? I think of them as DNS and content delivery. I was impressed with what they had done, because this is obviously someone that already has a lot of assets around the world. They don't need to build out POPs. They're probably the world's leading player in terms of content delivery. So
Yeah.
they probably have a POP just about everywhere that
Yeah.
anybody else could. But I like the fact that they were able to bring out a new product that wasn't cobbled together from old
Right.
parts, like the kind of Cisco's and the Palo Altos
Yep.
have been doing. So they were able to kind of utilize that infrastructure, but still build something that's quite new and like a kind of clean new service.
Yeah, it's a fantastic way to put it. They've done a great job of landing and expanding by being the leading CDN, like you said, with that global regional POP network. And then the things that came along naturally for them, right? Like web access firewalls, DDoS
Mhm.
protection, the bot protection. They really are making a name for themselves. And they're also, from a marketing perspective, they're getting a little bit more bold. They're calling out some really big players and saying it. Now, I've had the fortune of knowing Jay, the CEO of Zscaler, for a number of years, and then I think a great deal. You can see here, along with everything, spending intentions are coming down year over year. That's partially due to budget, but it's also partially due to other players catching up. I think at the time, Zscaler was the really the only game in town for
Mhm.
true zero trust network access. But it does seem like Cloudflare, as you can see here, is a little bit more stable. Their spending is up survey over survey. And when you look at it on an adoption basis, Zscaler is still just as high, but Cloudflare is number two. So they're becoming, when I didn't originally think of them as competitors, they do seem to be sort of on a collision course here. Would you agree with
Yep.
that, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with what you say about Zscaler dominating this marketplace. I don't know whether it's that they were the first to
Mm-hmm.
market with a true zero trust, or whether it's just, that they were able to, establish themselves and become a well-known name, but they are certainly dominant. And I think that their price reflects that that they've had this really strong market position, and I think they're in for some serious competition now.
Yeah, you're leading me right to my next question. So we've seen it happen so many times, right? Whether it was Oracle, even IBM back in the day. But once you become entrenched, you start raising your prices, and then you raise your prices to the point where people are willing to look at your competitor. I've heard a few different of your peers mention that they were a little frustrated with how quickly Zscaler pushed through some pricing. Is that something that resonates with you?
It is, yeah. I think that they've been able to leverage the fact that so many people are using them for other services, such as their cloud firewall, their content screening. That they already had a foot in the door with a lot of companies, so they were the first to get there with zero trust as well. And yeah, their pricing is very expensive. It is, obviously they bring a lot of experience and footprint in this industry, but high price is definitely a barrier for us.
And then I'm just going to bring up this other name because I don't get to speak about it too much, which is F5 Networks, and you also said to mention it in there. Now, when I think of F5, a lot of times I think about more about like load balancing and application security and making sure that you've got secure.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily call them out as you. I think your question was, are there any names that you sort of not so recognize or maybe work with? I mentioned them because there's someone that we currently work with. And
okay, understood. And is it for that load balancing type of service?
It is, yeah. But this is again someone I think of as a kind of legacy player that perhaps has a ZTNA offering that I'm not aware of. And they might find that.
I guess what I wanted to ask is because unfortunately, we're seeing, we'd like to root for all the companies we track, but we have to stay objective and independent. And we are seeing our spending decline for them quite considerably. We're at, a single digit net score, which is not healthy at all. The overall survey sector net score for this sector is 22%. So when you see names above it, that means they're doing better than average. And when you see an 8%, they're clearly doing much worse than average. Are there players like a Zscaler, Cloudflare that are starting to encroach on F5 and their core legacy services?
Yeah, absolutely. I think organizations like us that maybe don't have ZTNA are looking to come and displace some of those legacy vendors and for that spend to be redeployed. The money that you're spending on load balancers and firewalls and VPN appliances is being reduced, and redeployed to things like ZTNA.